Discover the incredible transformation. How one woman overcame heartbreaking divorce on her 40th birthday. The sun was just beginning to rise over Maplewood, a small Midwestern town that bustled with the daily activities of its tightly knit community. It was the morning of Sarah's 40th birthday. She stood in her kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with the pancakes sizzling on the stove. The day should have felt special, but a storm brewed just out of sight. Sarah's heart raced with the news she was about to receive from her husband Mark, a truth that would spiral her life into chaos. Just a few hours later, in the quiet, dim light of the living room, he delivered the bombshell. "I've met someone else, Sarah. I'm leaving." Her world shattered in an instant. As she clutched the edge of the sofa, the room spun around her, a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief, tears blurring her vision. How could this happen? In an instant, her identity, a devoted wife and mother, seemed to dissolve into mist. As she faced the judgmental whispers of her neighbors, the whispers that echoed in her mind felt sharper than any knife. What went wrong? They'd ask, their eyes glancing back at her with curiosity and pity. She had devoted herself to her family, and now she felt stripped of her worth, a failure branded by betrayal. Her two children, Emily and Jacob, sensed their mother's distress. Her tight-lipped smile did little to disguise the pain beneath. Wandering the streets of her hometown, Sarah stumbled upon the community center. Inside, the smell of freshly baked goods filled the air, while laughter echoed off the walls. It was there she met Arthur, a war veteran with a life story that could fill volumes. His weathered hands traced the edge of the table as he listened to Sarah's tearful confession. "You can't let this define you," he said, eyes now ignited with compassion. His words, like a spark, ignited a flame of hope within her, a realization that she could reclaim her life. Inspired, Sarah turned back to her forgotten crafting hobby. Each stitch in her sewing machine, every stroke of a paintbrush became a cathartic release, channeling her heartache into creativity. She filled the modest workshop in her garage with vibrant crafts, transforming pain into beauty. With newfound determination, she launched a small online business, Joyful Creations, meant to inspire others. But the local leaders held skepticism, their doubting gazes never straying far from her attempts at independence. "What will others think?" they would murmur, dismissing her labor of love as a mere hobby. The echoes of the town reminded her of the societal norms she rebelled against, steeped in old-fashioned ideals. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah discovered her strength, she felt emboldened by the women around her, all yearning for their voices to be heard. The day of the upcoming town hall meeting loomed ahead, and she found herself rehearsing her speech with anxious determination. Would she have the courage to confront town leader Edwards? Would she finally shatter the biases that had kept so many women like her from rising? As the meeting approached, her heart raced with trepidation, but doubts and fears tried to grip her tightly. She felt raw and exposed, a powerful amalgamation of hope and uncertainty swelling within her. When the day arrived, she stood alone against the crowd of judging eyes, heart pounding as she faced the people of Maplewood, ready to share her truth. Would she rise to embrace her power, or would she be swallowed by the expectations of a world that tried to hold her back? The challenge lay before her, sparks ready to ignite. As Sarah stepped up to the podium, the bright light seemed to magnify the enormity of her decision. She took a deep breath, her chest rising with the weight of anticipation and unease. The chatter of the crowd faded into a dull hum as she focused on the faces in front of her, each one a reminder of the town's judgment, but also a symbol of the change she yearned to inspire. "Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice slightly trembling but gaining strength as she pushed through. "I stand before you not just as a mother, but as a woman who has grappled with pain, identity, and rebirth." She could feel Emily's and Jacob's eyes on her, filled with a mix of concern and pride. Their support kindled a fire within her. "I know some of you may have questions about my journey," she continued, her gaze meeting town leader Edwards. I'm not here to justify my life choices. I'm here to share that a woman's worth is not defined by her past or her marital status. The murmur in the room grew, a mix of murmurs of support and skepticism. It was a cacophony of emotion, just like her heart. As she spoke, memories of Mark's betrayal flickered in her mind. They filled her with a fierceness she didn't know she had. When I was left behind, I felt as if I lost everything. But then I realized that what was gone was not the essence of who I am. I discovered creative pursuits that filled the void, allowing me to transform my grief into something beautiful. Her breath quickened with passion, her hands gesticulating as she spoke about her crafts and the joy they brought to others. The crowd shifted, some leaning in to hear her more clearly. There was a connection forming in the air, a collective understanding that started to bridge the gap between her and them. There are countless women in this town who feel lost but are aching to be heard, she pressed on, the sincerity of her voice echoing against the walls. And if we don't support each other, who will? It's time to lift one another up instead of dragging each other down with judgment and tradition. She could see some faces nodding, reflecting the unspoken thoughts buzzing within them. Suddenly, a voice cut through the crowd. A woman near the back stood, her face a mixture of confusion and anger. You think just anyone can go around starting businesses? It's not that simple. The air thickened, tension rising as murmurs and gasps swept through. Exactly, Sarah replied, her heart racing. It's not simple. It's a struggle. But we're all capable of overcoming, if only we believe in ourselves and support each other. The words flowed from her, raw and honest, leaning into a vulnerability she had long buried. In that moment, Sarah saw a shift not only within herself but in the eyes of the women around her. They no longer looked like mere spectators, they appeared like potential allies ready to stand with her instead of against her. As she concluded, an unexpected surge of applause erupted from the room. The warmth of their support enveloped her, igniting a renewed sense of purpose. But, as she stepped down from the podium, self-doubt crept back in. Would this really change anything? For now, she had sparked a conversation. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The voices of Maplewood were just starting to awaken, and she knew the journey ahead would be filled with challenges and revelations. How would she guide not just her own transformation, but the transformation of the women around her? And as she met Emily and Jacob's proud gazes, a new question lingered in her heart. Would the community embrace the change she envisioned, or would the weight of tradition pull them back? Stepping off the stage, Sarah felt an electric buzz in the air. The applause had ended, but the echoes of her words lingered. She caught Emily's eyes, shining with encouragement, and Jacob's gentle nod sparked a warmth in her chest. Would they really rally around her message? As she descended the steps, the reality of the moment settled in. The older woman who had challenged her earlier was making her way through the crowd, her expression now softer, curiosity replacing disdain. Look, Sarah, she began, stopping just a pace away. I didn't mean to come off strong. It's just starting from scratch is hard. I've been trying to do that for years. How do you keep pushing through? Sarah felt a swell of compassion for her. It's about finding what ignites you, she replied, her voice steadier now. There's always a spark if you look closely. The woman nodded, eyes shimmering as if understanding a shared struggle. I used to paint before everything went south. Maybe it's time I pick it up again. Absolutely. Sarah said, her heart racing with newfound hope. If she could light even one flame in someone else, maybe her message was taking root after all. As small groups formed around her, conversations ignited. Women shared stories of heartbreak and resilience, some laughing through tears and others holding back sobs as they recounted their journeys. Sarah became a conduit, listening and encouraging, feeling a sense of purpose swirl around her like a dance. But chaos soon bloomed alongside the warmth of camaraderie. Shouts erupted from the other side of the hall, startling Sarah. You can't just expect the world to change overnight, Sarah. This isn't a fairy tale. A tall man stood there, arms crossed, his face set in a fierce frown. The crowd hushed, tension weaving back into the air. Oh, come on. Someone countered, stepping forward. She's right. We can't sit back and let tradition choke us. It's time for a change. The man scoffed. And what? Hand out business licenses like candy? You really think that's the solution? Sarah felt her heart pound, the air heavy again. No, it's not that simple. But hope doesn't come from sitting still. We need to empower each other. The man rolled his eyes, shaking his head. But in the faces of those around her, she saw glimmers of belief and determination. I see you, and I hear you, Sarah called out, her voice steady amidst the rising tension. Change won't come easily, but we must be willing to try. That starts now. Just then, Emily squeezed her hand, grounding her amidst the chaos. Let us not lose sight of what we're building here, she whispered. The atmosphere shifted slightly. The man's shoulders dropped a fraction, uncertainty creeping into his stance. Sarah breathed in, sensing a new wave of energy in the room. Together we can turn fear into power, doubt into action. We've all got dreams. Let us help each other breathe life into them. The crowd shifted, murmurs of agreement spreading like wildfire. The man blinked, swallowing hard, but some of the fire of his resistance softened. Maybe, he said quietly, maybe there is something to that. Exhilaration coursed through Sarah. With every shared story, she could sense chains breaking. Yet a knot of anxiety twisted deep within her as she pondered what lay ahead. Would they accept the challenge, or would the safety of tradition confine them once more? As the crowd buzzed with conversation and new ideas began to form, Sarah felt that her fight was far from over. Challenges loomed ahead, but with the weight of hope beginning to lift, she was ready to explore the uncharted waters together. But one question hung heavy in the air: would they possess the courage to take that leap into the unknown? The crowd began to disperse slowly, yet the energy remained palpable. Sarah stood off to the side, watching as people engaged one another, sharing ideas and rekindling forgotten dreams. It was as if a fire had ignited, illuminating the shadows that had lingered in the corners of their lives. But deep inside, Sarah's heart thumped with a mix of excitement and fear. Could she truly guide this group through the tumultuous path of change? Emily stayed by her side, a supportive presence amidst the whirlwind of emotions. You did it, Sarah. You reached them, she said, her voice bright with pride. I don't know, this moment feels fragile, Sarah replied, looking back at the man who had challenged her. He stood a little to the side, still processing what had just happened, his brow furrowed and face thoughtful. What if they don't believe in themselves? Emily placed her hand on Sarah's shoulder. That's why they need you. You've shown them they're not alone in this. Just then, a soft voice broke through their conversation. Sarah? It was the older woman, her demeanor transformed from earlier. I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I talk to you for a moment? Of course, Sarah replied, inviting her close. What's on your mind? I want to thank you. You reminded me of something I thought was lost forever: my love for painting. Her voice trembled slightly as her eyes filled with tears. I'm terrified to start again, but you made me realize that if I don't try, nothing will change. I'm so glad to hear that, Sarah said, her heart swelling. Every small step counts. It's never too late to start. The woman nodded, wiping away a tear. I'm going to pull out my old easel tomorrow. I'll share what I create with all of you. Sarah beamed at her courage. That's the spirit. And remember, we'll be right here cheering you on. As the two women shared a brief, heartfelt hug, Sarah felt that knot within her loosen. This was just a flicker of change, but it was powerful. She watched as more individuals drifted her way, wanting to share their dreams or fears. The tall man in the corner finally approached, still wearing that guarded expression but with a new spark of curiosity in his eyes. Can we talk? He said, crossing his arms, though not as defiantly as before. Of course, Sarah replied, noticing the way the crowd quieted to listen. I get that things need to change, he started, his voice low. But how? Where do we even begin? I mean, I've been stuck for so long it feels safe, even if it's suffocating. The vulnerability in his tone cut through the noise. Sarah stepped closer, her heart racing, recognizing that this was a moment for honesty. It's daunting, I know. But safe doesn't always mean good. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. Growth often comes from discomfort. He sighed, the tension in his body easing slightly. So what's next for us? How do we move from talk to action? Sarah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the audience, filled with eagerness. Let's take it one step at a time. How about we regroup next week, brainstorm ideas, and set small goals together? There was a murmur of agreement, and that spark of hope nestled deeper in Sarah's chest. It was happening. But as she gazed back toward the crowd, she felt the familiar weight of uncertainty creep back. What challenges would arise when they faced their fears? Would they stay as committed when the initial thrill faded? The moment felt electric, filled with potential. What lay ahead was uncharted territory, and Sarah's heart fluttered with anxiety. In that moment, she couldn't help but wonder, would they truly believe enough to dive into the deep end together, or would they let the fear of taking that leap hold them back? The next week arrived with a gust of wind that seemed to usher in both doubt and excitement. Sarah stood in front of the small crowd gathered for their first official brainstorming session. The energy was different today, charged, yet tinged with a hint of apprehension. Smiles mingled with anxious glances, as if everyone was secretly asking themselves, can we really do this? Hey everyone. Thanks for being here, Sarah began, her voice steady while her heart pounded in her chest. I know this is new territory for all of us. But I believe we can make real changes together. A woman in the back raised her hand. What if we get stuck again? What happens if we don't know what to do next? A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd. Sarah nodded, empathizing with their fears. That's completely valid. Change can be scary. But remember, we're not alone. We will support each other every step of the way, she assured them, trying to infuse her voice with confidence. Another voice piped up, this time from the tall man she had spoken to the week before. What if we don't have the skills we need to succeed? He looked vulnerable, the weight of his concerns heavy. Then it's simple, Sarah replied without skipping a beat. We can learn those skills together. We can find resources or even enlist some local experts. It's all about taking those first steps. Does that sound fair? Their hesitant nods fueled Sarah's resolve. She continued, let's break into smaller groups. Discuss what you're passionate about or what you want to achieve. Then, let's set goals even if they're small. As they broke into groups, Sarah could feel the tension begin to lift. Laughter bubbled up and hopeful chatter filled the room. Sensing the turning tides, she moved from group to group, listening and guiding. She watched as individuals who had once been strangers began sharing ideas like streams merging into a river. One group was eager to explore community gardening as a way to bring people together. Another spoke passionately about starting a book club. For the first time that day, Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. Maybe she could truly guide them. Yet, as she observed the groups connecting, a knot twisted in her stomach at the thought of what might come next. What if reality set in? What if obstacles blocked their paths? The meeting wrapped up with a circle where everyone shared their proposed goals, and when they ended, a round of applause broke out, filling the room with warmth. We're really doing this, one excited member declared, her eyes gleaming with possibility. Let us keep this progress going, Sarah said, a smile breaking across her face, but as they exited, a cold breeze swept through, a shiver traveling down her spine. She caught a glimpse of the older artist who had vowed to return to painting. Would she stick to her promise? Would she, like the rest, feel the tug of self-doubt? Sarah's heart raced as she thought about the coming week. She had set herself up as a guide, but what if the burden of leadership became too heavy? What if, when faced with the raw vulnerabilities of change, some of them faltered and turned back? The group had only just begun, and the future felt as murky as the October fog rolling in. A flicker of uncertainty gnawed at her heart. Could they rally together when the pressure grew? Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from Emily. Are you ready for the challenges ahead? With one deep breath, Sarah opened her phone, her fingers lingering over the screen. She was both terrified and exhilarated, for she sensed that change had truly begun, yet it was still fragile. How far would they all go on this rocky road together? Can hope really flourish amidst doubt? The following week arrived like a shadow creeping over the sunny optimism of their brainstorming session. Sarah felt the weight of silence in the air as she entered the small community hall, the room empty save for a few early birds. The chilly breeze from the door brought a chill to her bones, but her resolve warmed her spirit. She was determined to keep the momentum alive. Anxiety tingled in her fingertips as she pulled out the flip chart from the corner. The colorful markers lay neatly beside it, waiting for their magic. But underneath, a worry gnawed at her. What if fewer people showed up this time? What if their joyful chatter was just a fleeting moment? As others trickled in, she recognized familiar faces, but each person wore a slightly different expression. The tall man from the last meeting, Mike, looked around as if searching for reassurance. The artist, Anne, shuffled her feet nervously. People seemed unsure and guarded, like wild animals preparing to flee. "Thanks for coming back, everyone," Sarah said, hopeful yet nervous. "Let us move forward together. I know there's power in our ideas." Her voice, though steady, felt like a thin thread holding back a flood. Emily arrived as the last member. She flashed a smile, her warm presence cutting through the tension. "You all seem anxious," she remarked, crossing her arms comfortingly. "It's just that, well, we are still figuring things out," and whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "What if this doesn't work?" "Let us not look at obstacles as the end of our journey," Sarah interjected, her heart racing. "What if we view them as unexpected chapters of our story?" The group seemed to consider her words. It was a flicker of hope igniting just as another doubt stirred the air. Mike leaned forward, an urgency in his tone. "Can we really achieve what we talked about? I find it hard to believe, honestly." His vulnerability resonated like a haunting note in the air. Sarah felt a wave of empathy. She remembered the question that had gripped her just before they embarked on this shared journey. "I promise, together we will face all the challenges. We are building this community step by step. We'll support each other through the hardships," she replied, trying to show them the solid ground she believed they could stand on. Slowly, they began to share fresh ideas again. And proposed an art exhibition, a way to spotlight local talent and inspire others. Mike mentioned reviving neighborhood cleanup days. The ideas flowed like water from a broken dam, glimmering with potential. The overcast clouds seemed to break a little, letting streaks of sunlight in. However, doubt reared its head again. There was an unspoken tension in the room, circulating like a nervous current. Every idea shared lifted some spirits while pulling others down. It was clear, the struggle to believe in change was real. As Sarah watched the room fill with excitement, she couldn't shake her own worries. What if they faced real hurdles ahead? What if disagreements tore at their fragile bond? In an attempt to bridge those worries, Sarah suggested they address their fears head-on. "Let us talk about the what-ifs that keep us awake at night," she urged, her voice raw with emotion. Several people took turns sharing their insecurities. With each confession, a crack formed in the armor of doubt surrounding them. It was both a heavy and freeing process, a revealing of souls longing for connection and acceptance, but then, a sudden silence enveloped the room. Something had shifted. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. She scanned the faces before her. The impending weight of their shared anxiety crackled like electricity. This was not merely a moment of vulnerability, it was the birth of something deeper, awash in uncertainty. Sarah took a breath. Change doesn't happen overnight. But if we keep the conversation going, I believe we can overcome anything. As the meeting progressed, she noticed the gleam of hope in some eyes, while others still clung to their doubts. Her chest tightened at the thought of their journey. Was she capable of weathering the storm for all of them? And what awaited them when they ventured out into the world where self-doubt loomed large? In the gripping silence that followed, a question hung in the air, palpable and unnerving. Would they be strong enough to face their fears together, or would the shadows of uncertainty swallow them whole? The tension in the room hung thick, a temporary coat of darkness over the flickering light of hope. Sarah could sense the wall of doubt rising again. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, where one small push could send them tumbling down. "Let us take a moment," she said, her voice cutting through the haze. "Everyone, close your eyes." It felt strange to ask, but she needed them to focus, to look within. As they complied, Sarah could hear the soft rustle of clothing and the quiet creak of chairs. They were all together, they were all scared, but they were here. "Picture what our community can look like," she continued. "What do we want?" Feel the excitement of that image. Hold on to it. Seconds passed in a quiet stillness, and for the first time, Sarah felt like they might actually be on the same page. She opened her eyes, and the faces before her showed a flicker of connection. A shared dream had taken root. "How can we make that image real?" She prodded gently. This time, hands shot up. Emily spoke first, her voice steady. "What about forming smaller groups? We could tackle specific projects based on our interests. It feels less overwhelming that way." The energy shifted. Sarah could see the light growing in the room, a collective spark igniting within them. "Yes." And chimed in, her earlier hesitations fading. "I could lead the art initiative. We could have community workshops. Art can bring us together." Mike nodded, a newfound determination in his eyes. "And I can coordinate the cleanups. I know a few people who'd love to join us." The ideas began to bounce back and forth like a ball of light. Each suggestion wove a connection stronger than the last, knitting them into a collective fabric, but then Sarah noticed a familiar tightness creeping into her chest again. "Wait," she said, feeling the need to speak before the current of enthusiasm obscured the lurking shadows. "What happens when we face challenges? Because we will." The room fell heavy again. Shadows returned, creeping back into their hopeful faces. Mike took a deep breath, his brow furrowing. "I just wish we knew how to maintain our connection. Last time it was easy, but what if the excitement fades? What if we lose touch?" Sarah's heart sank at his words. What could she say? She had battled those thoughts herself. The room tensed again, a familiar fear creeping in. "We will have to keep checking in," she suggested quietly, recognizing the vulnerability that tied them together. "We can schedule regular meetups, or even start a group chat, something to hold us accountable. Our bond has to be more than just projects." Their faces softened, a collective sigh of understanding washed through them. It was clear they had to nurture this relationship, not just the ideas. And leaned in, her eyes shining with excitement. "And if we disagree, we can talk it out. Instead of shutting down, we'll share our feelings like we just did today." They nodded in agreement, like plants reaching toward the sun. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could turn those shadows into stepping stones. As the meeting began to wind down, Sarah felt a swell of pride. Change was in the air, no longer a looming fear, but a living process. Yes, the path was filled with uncertainties, yet it felt like they were igniting a spark that could light the way. The last few conversations faded into chatter, and they began to disperse. Sarah relaxed, watching people exchange goodbyes, laughter resonating around her like music. Hope swirled through her like a gentle breeze, but then, a voice broke through her contented state. "Hey, Sarah." It was Mike. "Can we talk? I'd like to share something." Her heart raced at the unexpected seriousness. What could it be? As the other members left, she felt a pang of nervousness. What did Mike need to say? Would it be more doubt, or a new layer of hope unwrapped? "Sure," Sarah replied, holding her breath. Whatever the conversation would reveal, she needed to be ready for it. And as the door creaked shut behind the last member, the air crackled with anticipation. Mike shifted his weight, glancing down at the floor. The room was now empty, the air heavy with the echoes of laughter and conversation lingering in the walls. Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down around them. "I've been thinking a lot about what we discussed," he began, hesitating as his fingers fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "You know, about connecting, maintaining our bond. I want to believe it can work," but his voice trailed off. Sarah could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the flicker of doubt that had initially haunted them all. She stepped closer, inviting him to continue. But? She prompted gently, sensing this was more than just a casual check-in. He looked up, and she could see the struggle etched across his face. What if it doesn't? What happens if we fail? If I can't keep everyone engaged, or if my ideas fall flat? I mean, I don't want to let anyone down. The honesty of his words struck at Sarah's heart. She remembered the gnawing fears that had surfaced in her own mind, lurking around the edges like shadows. We all feel that way sometimes, Mike, she said softly. It's scary. But you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not alone in this. It's a journey. He nodded, his shoulders relaxing just a notch, but the doubt didn't completely leave his eyes. Yeah, but what if someone doesn't like my ideas? Then we talk about it. We find a solution together, she replied. That's what community is about, support and open communication. You've got this, Mike. You care about this group, and that's what matters most. The energy shifted once more, and Sarah felt a warmth radiating between them. She could see him processing her words, the worry seething like a tide. Maybe you're right, he mumbled, still wrestling with the insecurities that had haunted him. But I can't shake this sense that I need to prove myself. Just then, a door from another room creaked open, and a small dog burst in, wagging its tail enthusiastically. The little creature dashed toward them, an innocent energy filling the space with joy. Mike chuckled, the corners of his mouth lifting. Guess someone else believes in us, huh? Looks like it. Sarah laughed, the atmosphere alive with a hint of vibrancy. But her heart ached at the realization that it was still a work in progress. What if I'm not cut out for this? He asked suddenly, his tone shifting back to doubt. Hey, she countered, taking a step closer and leaning in slightly. What if you are? What if every stumble is just a step toward understanding? You don't have to carry it all alone. His gaze shifted again, this time to the picture of a happy family hanging on the wall. Sarah noticed the small smile playing at the edges of his lips. There was a glimmer of hope, but uncertainty still wrapped around it, like a fragile vine. I want to make a difference, you know? Then that's where you start, Sarah replied firmly. A difference doesn't require perfection. It requires passion, connection, and the willingness to rise together. Mike took a long breath, exhaling slowly as if releasing a weight. Maybe it's time for me to be vulnerable with everyone. Absolutely. We need that, everyone does. Yeah, he said, a flicker of courage igniting in his eyes. Maybe we can make a plan to share our fears together, be open about what holds us back. Now that's a powerful idea, Sarah said, feeling the hope swell in her chest. They both sensed it, the path ahead might be rocky, but the promise of transformation was glowing on the horizon. As they stood there, caught in the moment, a familiar burst of laughter echoed through the hallway outside. Neither of them could resist stealing a glance towards the door. What if we really could turn this into something bigger? Mike asked quietly, a spark illuminating his features. Then let us do it, together, Sarah breathed, her heart pounding with anticipation. But just as she reached for her phone to text the others, her fingers hesitated. But what if some people don't respond positively? What happens then? An unexpected silence enveloped them. The question lingered in the air, drawing forth an unsettling uncertainty that lingered below the surface of their new hope. Sarah felt the tension growing, wrapping around them like a fog. She could almost hear echoes of their past failures fueling the doubts that crept back into Mike's mind. His brows knitted together, deep in thought, weighing possibilities that lingered under the surface. Let us not spiral, she said gently, breaking the silence. What if we focus on what we can control? Mike nodded slowly, his gaze drifting back to the happy family picture. Yeah, but what if it doesn't go the way we hope? What if they laugh at us? Her heart ached for him. If they laugh, or if they don't agree, we adapt. That's the beauty of sharing this journey. We grow from it. The little dog, who had been sniffing around, returned to Mike's side, resting its head against his leg, offering unexpected comfort. "You know," Mike murmured, scratching behind the dog's ears, "if this little guy can cheer me up, maybe it's a sign we can withstand a few bumps." She smiled at the thought, her heart warming. "Exactly. If we're bringing kindness into the room, that's what counts. People will resonate with that, even against the backdrop of challenges." In this moment, Mike's demeanor shifted slightly, as a flicker of determination settled on his face. "I want everyone to feel like they belong, to know they matter. I just hope they see my intentions. I don't doubt they will. You're so passionate." "That shines through," she reassured him, carefully placing her hand on his arm, the connection solidifying in that small gesture. The laughter from outside grew louder, reminding them of the community waiting for their guidance. "What do you say we give it a shot? Set a date, maybe a meeting to open the floor for ideas?" Sarah suggested, her excitement bubbling over. "Yeah," Mike replied, a glimmer of enthusiasm breaking through. "And we can all share what holds us back, what we're afraid of. Transparency can be powerful." "Definitely," she said, a rush of elation washing over her. "It's the chance for us to strengthen our trust. Every piece shared makes us all stronger." He grabbed his phone, the fire igniting in his eyes. "We could even create a fun theme around it, like Fearless Fridays or something. Get everyone excited and engaged." Sarah laughed, the lightness in the air lifting her spirit. "That would be so much fun. Let us brainstorm ideas to make it interactive." As they began to sketch out possibilities, the playful barks and cheerful chatter continued around them. The optimism painted their surroundings in brighter hues, pushing shadows of doubt further back. But what if one person's fear is something really intense? Like, how do we handle that? Mike asked thoughtfully, his brow furrowing again. "That's where our compassion comes in," Sarah replied. "We create a space that feels safe for everyone to share. It's not about fixing, it's about listening and understanding." Just then, a few familiar faces appeared in the doorway, curiosity written all over them. It was Tom and Lisa, two members who had been actively involved but suddenly seemed hesitant after recent conflicts. "Hey, sorry to interrupt," Tom said sheepishly, his eyes darting between them. "Not at all," Mike responded, brightening at their arrival. "We were just..." It became clear that things were shifting in ways they hadn't anticipated. The commitment was growing, and the air buzzed with potential. "Can we join?" Lisa asked, a flicker of hope dancing in her eyes. "Of course," Sarah welcomed, feeling the warmth of connection sparking anew. As they all stood there, unsure yet hopeful, the question lingered in Sarah's mind: could this be the moment everything changed for them? But then, with a sudden wave of apprehension, she thought, what if their journey exposed deeper wounds they weren't ready to confront? A sense of renewal swept through Maplewood as sunlight kissed the town, brightening Sarah's once heavy heart. Today was a new day, bathed in hope and possibility. The anticipation in the air felt like electric vibrations, the culmination of weeks of struggle and growth. At the community hall, Sarah stood in front of a familiar group. But today, the atmosphere buzzed with an additional tingle of excitement. Each pair of eyes held stories of doubt, dreams, hurt, and healing. This was the moment where the community she had longed to rally began to take shape. "Welcome back, everyone," she greeted, her voice radiating determination and warmth. "We've been talking about sharing our fears, right?" Quiet nods and murmurs of agreement filled the room. She smiled. Vulnerability had woven them closer together, like stitches in a quilt. "Today, I want us to share those fears one by one," Sarah prompted, feeling the pulse of anxiety and excitement in the air. "Let us create a safe space, a sanctuary for us to be honest. We've built a foundation of support, and now it's time to carve a path forward." The first to share was Anne, the artist. "I fear failure," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "What if my exhibition doesn't resonate? What if no one comes?" She looked around, searching for encouragement. "You're not alone in that fear," Anne, Mike chimed in. "Remember, it's about creating, not the outcome. That's part of the beauty. The group nodded, affirming her struggles. Then it was Mike's turn. I worry about letting everyone down. What if I can't keep the momentum going? A palpable tension hung in the air. To his surprise, Sarah instinctively reached for his hand, offering silent support, and it made all the difference. Everyone is here because you've shown passion. We share this vision together, Sarah assured him. We will lift each other when we stumble. As they continued sharing, the room burst with emotion. Individual voices blended into a symphony of shared struggles, turning discontent into unity. They laughed through tears and whispered words of encouragement. They transformed their vulnerabilities into strength. With each passing story, something profound shifted in Sarah. She realized they were no longer just a collection of struggling individuals. They were a community, a tapestry of resilience and collective hope, woven tight through shared experience. After hours of sharing, laughter, and tears, it was time for Sarah to step forward once more. What we have here is something so powerful, she said, her voice steady yet passionate. We've connected through our fears and dreams, but now let us focus on what we want to build together. Let us transition from discussion to action. Who's ready to step forward? Eager hands shot up. Let us do this. Someone shouted. The energy surged with palpable excitement. With newfound determination, they brainstormed initiatives, from art exhibitions to community gardens. Each idea felt like a new brushstroke on the canvas of their dreams, vibrant and alive with potential. They pledged to meet regularly, to check in on each other, and to keep the doors to dialogue wide open. Finally, as they wrapped up the meeting, the group rallied together for a photo. In that moment, Sarah caught a glimpse of her two kids in the audience, their beaming smiles like a bright sun illuminating her heart. Emily and Jacob's unwavering support filled her soul with pride and energy. As the camera clicked, capturing the essence of hope and resilience that echoed in every smile, she felt the weight of her past begin to lift. The fear of being nothing without Mark faded. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a warrior, holding hands with an army of incredible women and men, ready to face any challenge. Let us make a pact, everyone, Sarah said, her voice breaking the joyous chatter. This is just the beginning. We'll rise together. Maplewood will be a place of change. Together, we're unstoppable. As they cheered, enveloped in an embrace of community love, Sarah's heart soared. Her 40th birthday had marked the end of an old chapter, but it had birthed a powerful new beginning. With tears of joy cascading down her cheeks, she realized she had transformed. Inciting with compassion and courage, she had ignited a fire in every soul in that room. Now, the true journey began. It was time to embrace all that lay ahead, and Sarah was ready to leap into that bright horizon, hand in hand with her community, full of hope and infinite possibility. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this beautiful transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second. You need to subscribe now.